Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Senbet Salam. This is the RSS, RasTafari, Sabbatical, Shabbatical study, right? Torah portion for this this Shavua, this week, if you please. It's known as Mishportim. Okay, here's some of the art that we have assembled right here in order to help bring out certain aspects of this particular Torah portion, reading and feeding. All right, hearing, the ear, to hear. In Gdiyas imnet kamesmatno. So then faith comes by hearing. Right, the Hebrew shepherds, right? Some call it the Hek or the Hak Shaus, right? The chefs, not the chefs that's cooking, but the chefs, the sifs like Yosef, Mishpot, right? Mishportim. Okay, we'll get into some of that right there as well. And I want to show this one because we see so often they really try to whitewash this particular image a whole lot. Let's see if we can bring this up right here. You can see the color differences right here. All right, so when we talk about the war as full spectrum, it's also artistically, and you can see that obviously there were different shades, right? As we can see, different shades, and maybe this is what this art basically showed, that the Hebrews, right, even from such a time, were an Afro-Shemitic people, right? But let's first of all get into this particular Torah portion, reading and feeding, which is known as Mishportim. Alright, Mishportim. Alright, and here's the readings right here. Okay. Give thanks to Wendamoch, I brothers and sisters and co-laborers. Let's get into this Torah portion right here. So this Torah portion is the 18th Torah portion, called Mishportim in the Amharic. It's known as, let's bring this up right here, and you can get this from this particular page right here. Torah portion, reading and feedings, right, at RasTafariGroundation.com. All right, and this is the 7th day. This is the key, the 7th day, beginning from the first, the Ehud, right? We begin to read and study, right, along the lines of the royal order, right? The royal order of the Ethiopian Hebrews, right? I royal order, and we've gone into much of I roots and culture. Need to also touch on some of the archival history, you know, so we can really see what the roots, right? Because many, the number of Israel will be as the sand of the sea, it says in the scripture, though the number of Israel be as the sand of the sea. This is only a remnant, right? Only a remnant shall be saved. Let's see if we can bring this one up as well. So this is also a very interesting one as well, and kind of touches on this particular Torah portion right here. And this particular Torah portion right here, Mishportim, is known as the judgments, right? The judgments. So here, Moses teaches the law. He teaches the Torah. Now, in the last Shabuas, the last Suba'es, the last Strong's Torah portion, which was known as Yotor, Yithro or Jethro, right? It explained that exactly 7 weeks after the Exodus from Egypt, from Gibbet, from the Het Kapata, right? 49 days after the first Pesach, the first Passover, Moses gathered the Israelites at the foot of Mount Sinai, right, to enter into covenant with Yahweh, to enter into a covenant with Yod He Weh, right? And let's use this particular graphic right here, right? To enter into a covenant with Israel. Israel entered into covenant. The Israelites, the Hebrews, the Hebrew community, right? And Israelawian, the Israelite, you could say the royal family, as it were, and their tribes, right? As well as their co-religionists, the Hebrews, in a dramatic display of thunder, lightning, and billowing smoke and fire. Yahweh descended, he who be who he be is I find majesty, descended upon the mountain, and there was a recitation of the Decalogue. There was a recitation of what we call the 10 words, right? Now, with that recitation of the 10 words, there's also a need, right, to hear, right? There was a need for the hearing, right? The hearing. So this was spoken in their hearing, right? As well as their seeing. So that you could almost say that their 5 senses, this was real, right? Now there's also a meta. So we're going to touch on, first of all, the historical aspect of it. And then we can first the history, and then what's called the mystery, right? First is the history, right? The history, and much of the history is encoded within what is often called metaphors or mythos or types or typology. So let's note that as well, brothers and sisters. So that's what occurred in the previous Torah portion, reading and feeding, right? Now, upon hearing, that's the key word, hearing. Faith comes by what? Hearing, and hearing by the word of Yahweh, by the word of Yah, by the word of Jah, if you please, right? Now, upon hearing the laws or the Torah's categorical requirements, however, the people, notice this, the people, they shrank back in fear, and they begged Moses, right, Muse, to be their mediator before Elohim. So, I don't know if you noted that. Go over that Torah portion right there, that when the people heard this, they shrank back in fear, right, because of that which they saw, right? It was that which they saw, right, that affected them more than anything. That which they saw and that which they heard too, no doubt, right? But we can see the senses, right? And the Satan of the senses affecting the Israelites. So they begged for Muse, for Mashu, right? Out of Kemet, out of Egypt, Gibbet, right? To be their what? To be their mediator. So they shrank back in fear. The Israelites, they shrank back in fear, right? And they begged Moses to be their mediator before Elohim. Baruch, Baruch, Baruch Hu. The people then stood afar off, while Muse alone, he drew near to the thick darkness, and he received the various laws, the Torah and the laws, the mishpatim, the judgments, right? And we can say also he received the ordinances too. You know what I mean? He received the judgments, you know, and he received the various laws and rules, we can say. All right, the primary laws and rules he received from Yahweh. But he drew near to the cloud. And we have the Israelites drawing away, right? We have them drawing away. They drew back. They shrank back. Now, the New Testament also speaks to that particular point of that drawing back, that shrinking back. Right? We say forward ever, backward never, for that very reason there. Right? Forward ever. Right? So the people then stood afar off while Moses alone drew near to the thick darkness to receive the various laws and rules from Yahweh, from he who be who he be. Right? Now that's what occurred in the previous Torah portion. There was a thick cloud and there was darkness when Yahweh descended. Now that's also a key, because the light shines in that darkness. Right? So we have to remember that the da'at, right? The black da'at, right? Now, this week's Torah portion, which is Mishpatim, it begins with Moses, right, in the cloud of thick darkness, right? So Moses is in this cloud. This Torah portion begins with Moses in that thick cloud, right? That cloud of thick darkness, right? Some might call it triple darkness. Right? Once again, the Trinity, Selassie, that triple darkness. That's usually the meaning of thick. Usually when we have these sort of words, when we start to study the Hebraicism and the idioms, right? The style, the types of speech. We could say even the slang or the Hebrew lingo, even as the modern Hebrews, we use a word like even the so-called N-word, nigger. Right, in various different ways, but it's according to the spirit of it. So we also have to recognize that the letter of the law is death, but the spirit gives life, right? And the natural man, right, just the created man, the once born man, does not receive the things of the spirit, right? Because they must be spiritually discerned. Right, so we can see that Moses is the spiritual one. He enters into this cloud of thick darkness, and he receives the additional instructions. And these instructions are to build the structure, right, or the order, right? When we're speaking of order, right, order in the court, right, in the court of Yahweh, order in the court of RasTafari. So the order, the royal order of the Ethiopian Hebrews is being brought out here, right? So he received these additional instructions. And what are these instructions regarding? They're regarding civil laws, right, for the Hebrew and the Israelitish people, the Israelite-ish people, the Hebrew and the Israelitish people. Now, the ancient Hebrew and some of the so-called Jewish sages, right, traditionally they count 53 distinct commandments in this parasha. There are 53 that they count, right, this portion of the Torah, making it one of the most so-called legalistic. And this is a term that you have to become familiar with, right, legalistic. Right? Why is this term important? Because it means law-focused, Torah-focused. Right? This is one of the most Torah-focused sections of the entire Bible. But no doubt, my brothers and sisters, there should be no doubt that it is even such. Why? Well, let's open this up right here. Right? All right, here we go. This is Mishpatim. All right, let's see if we can. Okay, let's get this right here. And here we have, this is what it's called, right? Mishpatim. All right, Mishpatim. All right, Mishpatim. Now we're going to touch on on so-called slavery, what is often called and referred to as slavery. Let's put these images over here. And okay, here we go right here. So, all right, Mishpatim. We just use this right here, Mishpatim. All right, which means judgments. The adjudication. Now let's go to the scripture right here. Let's go to this Torah portion right here. And let's go to Exodus 18. No, Exodus 21. Exodus 21. 18 was last week's, and this week's is Exodus 21. So in 21, what do we have in 21? And this is after the Decalogue and the instructions concerning the altar. All right, now it's very key that we understand the altar, because the altar in the New Covenant, right, the altar in the New Covenant, right, is the footstool, right, or is the feet, right, the altar, when we recognize the cross as tabernacle, right, the cross symbolically as a tabernacle, and what it is that Yeshua fulfilled according to its type, right, according to its spiritual type, according to the proverb, right. So this particular Torah portion right here, right, begins off in chapter 21, speaking of the Torah. Now these are the judgments, and these are concerning master and servant, right? These are the judgments. Now many will say, oh, this is instruction about slavery. And some would even say that, well, any book that, speaks about slavery is somehow disqualified from being a holy book. Now, this is according to their natural mind, right? This is according to their natural way of thinking, right? And as we said already, the natural man cannot perceive the things of Elohim, the things of true spirit, of true life, of the source, right? So let's go into this right here. The first verse is, now these are the judgments. These are the mishportim, right? In other words, this part is saying right here now, these are the mishportim, right? These are the judgments. Let's bring this up right here, right? These are the mishportim. These are the judgments. Now, B'Amarinya, we know it as Shirat, Sirat, the Sirat. And now Sirat is order, is like the regulations, we can say, right? The order. And it even forms part of a word later on in the Ethiopic that means like ceremony, or what you can even call ritual on a certain level, right? But these are the orders, these are the judgments, right? And it begins off of master and servant. Right, the first one is master and servant. And I find this one to be particularly interesting. All right, this one is particularly interesting because of what it speaks of the ear, right, and the connection with the ear, right, and the connection with the ear, no doubt, is quite important, right, because we are told that faith comes by hearing. Right, by hearing, right? So that key idea of hearing, the ear. You're not hear all, the hearing, right? So it says right here, if thou buy a Hebrew servant 6 years, he shall serve, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. If he came in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he were married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master, verse 4, if his master have given him a wife, and he have borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out by himself. And if the servant, I notice we're speaking about servant, right? Master and servant. And it's very key because the Moshiach also speaks to us concerning master and servant, right? So we have to both look at this according to its old type and also as it's revealed in its prophetic type, as the Moshiach, right, fulfilled this type, right, of the servant. And this is where the scriptures concerning the servant prophecy, right, and how Yeshua being that servant, right, being that servant that fulfilled this type, right? The Lord's servant, right? So I want you to make that connection, and hopefully we'll be able to bring that out by the Ruach HaKodesh, right, as we go forward. So let's go forward right here. So we have the Hebrew, right? The Hebrew servant, right? Now there's a psalm here. Let me see if I have this right here. There's a psalm, okay, that's connected. I'm looking at the notes right here. Okay, there's some marginal notes, but let's go on right here so we just get an overview. So we're at Exodus 21, right, speaking of the Hebrew servant. And if the servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free, then his master shall bring him to the judges. Now it's interesting because I went and studied this in the Hebrew and see that the word for judges there is the Elohim, right? Because the Elohim also were the judges, right? And we have a scripture also that touches on it's Exodus 22 and 28. Thou shalt not revile the gods, it says. Thou shalt not revile the gods, the Elohim, nor curse the ruler of thy people. That's a very important key, especially as we speak of certain Israelites,